UCLA is everybody's chic pick for 2014 coming out of the Pac-12 for the college football playoff. Typically, it's Oregon with all the flash and dash on the uniform and getting all the preseason hype. And of course, the Oregon Ducks have been an elite program in college football over the past 5 or 6 years, but it's the Stanford Cardinal that have won the big conference games in conference play in winning the Pac-12 championship the past 2 seasons and getting to 4 consecutive BCS Bowls, first under Jim Harbaugh and now David Shaw, not missing a beat. The formula has stayed the same. Front 7 on defense, stuffing the run, and of course, establishing the run on offense and a physical style of play not seen very often in the Pac-12 conference. So we check out Stanford's 2014 campaign and some of the idiosyncrasies that I see in this schedule as the Cardinal attempt to get back to the Rose Bowl or possibly the college football playoffs for a 3rd consecutive season. Okay, UC Davis starts it off on August 30th. That's a win. Then either Stanford or USC gets hit in the mouth with a Week 2 loss. USC at Stanford, a bit of an aberration from usual scheduling where Stanford and USC typically hook up late October or early November. USC winning that game last year. Stanford winning a huge overtime, double overtime, triple overtime game against Matt Barkley and company against that USC team that went 10-2 in 2011. So those have been some key Pac-12 matchups, again, late in the season. But this year, September 6th, one of the big Week 2 matchups in college football, USC at Stanford. And then Army comes to town to Palo Alto in Week 3. That's a return visit as Stanford went out to West Point in 2013. So that should be a win for the Cardinal there, taking on a game Army team there. Then back into Pac-12 play. Okay, this is how it sets up here. Again, 9 conference games in the Pac-12. So you have to play an uneven road and home schedule. And for Stanford, there are 5 road games. That's meaning there are 4 home games, 4 home, 5 road for the Stanford Cardinal. Keep in mind that they miss Arizona and Colorado. Is that really a favor? No, it's not much of a favor missing Colorado, even though the Buffs are improving and Arizona is a decent team that went 8-5 and defeated Boston College in a bowl game last year. So Arizona's probably about the 7th best team in the Pac-12. Colorado second to worst, most likely, this season. And so Stanford gets all the toughies in the Pac-12, of course, in its own division, and then in the South with Arizona State, USC, UCLA. Again, no Arizona, no Colorado. So again, it's UC Davis, it's Army, and then it's a Week 5 matchup, non-conference at Notre Dame. Will be a difficult game. Stanford should be a slight favorite. As things stand right now, things, of course, will change considerably getting to Week 5 on October 4th at that point. But Stanford could be an undefeated football team going to Notre Dame, and the Irish have a difficult schedule, and it includes the Cardinal. This has been a series that has been strongly established in recent years as Notre Dame has reached out to not only USC but Stanford and some other Pac-12 schools, including Arizona State, trying to bring the recruiting stamp all the way national to the West Coast for Notre Dame. Enough about the Irish. Stanford, again, at Washington, September 27th. That's the second Pac-12 game, and that's an important one, most notably for the Huskies, who are vying to be the surprise team coming out of the North. And Chris Peterson's first year at Washington for the Huskies, and a huge game at Washington. Stanford losing an upset game a couple years ago at Washington against the Huskies. So that's the second Pac-12 game. Then after the Notre Dame game, there's a Friday night game, October 10th, against Washington State and Mike Leach's crew that improved from 2 to 6 wins in 2013. Then a game October 18th at Arizona State, a team that Stanford doubled up in 2013. A couple routes in that matchup, specifically in the Pac-12 championship game. Stanford at Arizona State, October 18th. Then a game against Oregon State at home, October 25th. Then the Big E going to Oregon. So Stanford, of course, blowing out Oregon for 3 quarters last year at home, 20-0. They held on for the 26 20 win over the Ducks. And that has been the de facto North Division championship game in recent years. Stanford, Oregon, the game in Eugene this year on November 1st. So that's a pretty tough stretch there for Stanford. Think about it. Consecutive weeks at Washington, at Notre Dame. Washington State at Arizona State. Oregon State at Oregon. Again, Washington, Notre Dame, Washington State, Arizona State, Oregon, consecutive weeks, 6 of them, 6 consecutive games against toughies for Stanford before they dive in against Utah. The Utes will be difficult, but Stanford should win that game and avenge a loss. One of their 2 regular season losses at Utah last season, 27-21. Then they go to the traditional matchup against Cal, that one on the road. Cal, the worst team in the Pac-12, coming off 1-11. Then an oddity, I should say, in the schedule, not necessarily an odyssey, an oddity in the Pac-12 schedule this year. And this has been happening for the past few seasons. Pac-12 fans, fill me in on this scheduling quirk. It makes no sense to me because you've got non-division games going right here, and you have 6 teams in each division, so you should be able to play division opponents the last game of the season. What this sets up is Stanford goes to UCLA. That's a huge game. That could decide if there's another loss in the North Division. That could possibly set the stage for this, meaning a championship game berth for the winner or the loser getting knocked out. Okay, Stanford at UCLA, we're all waiting for that game. Many people expect that to be also the Pac-12 championship game. So for the second time in 3 years, you remember 2 years ago in 2012, the 2 teams met for the Pac-12 championship game after playing in the regular season finale, when Stanford-Cal was always the bitter rivalry game to finish off the season. Remember the play? Well, that was the last game of the season. Always was until just a few years ago. And I thought that was maybe just an oddity that happened that one particular season. But here we go again. Stanford at UCLA, Friday after Thanksgiving. Should be a great game. Will mean a ton. Could have a college football playoff berth potentially on the line. A Pac-12 championship berth as well. But why are Stanford and UCLA number 1 playing? Because it could be a back-to-back situation, playing a regular season game, then the championship game of the Pac-12. And number 2, Stanford-Cal, just like Oregon State, Ohio State, Michigan, Auburn, Alabama, go on and on and on, should be playing the final game of the season. So I love the game. It's a Friday. It should be interesting. Should be fun. Stanford at UCLA, but it should be Stanford-Cal, the final game of the season. So this is a difficult schedule for Stanford because, once again, they play all the toughies in the Pac-12. They've got the game at Notre Dame, and they've got to finish off with UCLA, and they've got 5 on the road and only 4 at home, and the road schedule is brutal. At Washington, at Notre Dame, at Arizona State, at Oregon, at UCLA. All right, Stanford fans, step up. Let's talk some Stanford football as you attempt to win a 3rd consecutive Pac-12 championship. Let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.